Particular bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't, as a former and as an alumni member of the Primary Production Committee for 6 years, but not a current member, I wasn't going to take a call in this debate, because this is a very important piece of legislation, until I heard the contribution of that, well-known diplomat Nick Smith. And I can talk about this because I'm going to respond to the scurrilous speech that he made in this House. This is a bill about biosecurity. The Primary Production Committee, traditionally, chaired ably by formerly by my colleague Damien O'Connor and now by Shane Ardern, has always been a committee, sir, which has been bipartisan. I remember one colleague saying, in fact, I think it was David Carter, I'm sure my colleague Damien O'Connor will recall this. David Carter in the Select Committee said, look, when they were in opposition, we know we're going to lose on this, but we're going to make our points, but we're going to ensure that the legislation, which is vital, coming out of the Primary Production Committee to our primary industries, comes to this House in as good a shape as it can be, because our primary industries are so important to us. So this legislation is generally non-partisan, and there have been some non-partisan contributions tonight. Apart from the scurrilous contribution, scurrilous, low-life contribution from Nick Smith. Because what Nick Smith said, which had nothing to do with this bill, which has accused my colleague, Damien O'Connor, a member for the West Coast, of playing politics with the tragedy that happened in Pike River. Now, that speech will stand in infamy by Nick Smith. My colleague Damien O'Connor, and I think it's appropriate to also acknowledge Chris Alconval and any other politician who was in and around that tragedy, just like the Canterbury earthquake and other tragedies that we've had, I think beyond politics, people responded as best they could in a non-partisan way to assist their communities, to put an arm around those who had lost loved ones, to express their love and affection for those communities and to support them. And for that scurrilous member, Nick Smith...
Order. Now, I understand what the member is doing, but all members are honourable members, and using the kind of adjective against the member that you just did is out of order.
That honourable member, Nick Smith, whose scurrilous behaviour, sir, in this House tonight, and this is a serious issue, who brought a member into disrepute, who made a scurrilous series of accusations that my colleague played politics with people's lives and politics with a tragedy. And his electorate borders the West Coast. And if anybody in their whole entire career has played politics over and over and over again, whether it be ACC, whether it be a whole host of issues, and wallowed in the gutter, the political gutter, it's the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith. And I stand here in defence of my colleague, and in defence and alongside Chris Arconval and the other colleagues who went down to Pike River, along with leaders in the community, and stood by those men and women who lost loved ones. And if they're watching tonight, I apologise on behalf of this Parliament for the despicable speech that member and accusations that member Nick Smith made. And on the back of a biosecurity bill. So Nick Smith's intent was not to get up and talk about a bill that was in any way connected to that series of tragedies. It was to get up on any piece of legislation and put the boot in to a colleague, but in doing so, trample over the memory and the tragedy and the emotion of those people who have lost loved ones in that tragedy. Now, politicians, sir, get accused of a lot. Sometimes, yeah, we are a bit nasty, sometimes we do put the slipper in to each other, and sometimes we do get a bit passionate. But by God, sir, there was a colleague of mine that talked about the fact that there are written standing orders and there are unwritten standing orders. And the unwritten standing orders are basically protocols between members of Parliament where there is a line that you do not cross. And I'm glad the member's here. I'm glad he's here with his hair standing on end and his red face. I'm glad he's here to listen, because that member's behaviour has been scurrilous. There's a lot said in this chamber. As I've said, the slipper goes in from time to time. But it has been attack the issue. I'll attack the issue all right, And the issue is a member of parliament coming into this chamber using a basically bipartisan piece of legislation to accuse another member of playing politics with those who have died in a tragedy. Died in a tragedy. And here we go, because Dr. Nick Smith, I'm glad he's here, shows no remorse in trampling over the spirit and memory of those people who were lost. That member will go as, he is the sort of political version of a limbo dancer. He will go as low as he can in this House. And he did tonight, over a biosecurity bill. Wouldn't have mattered if it was a bill, it wouldn't matter if it was a bill on anything. He got up to talk about biosecurity to put the slipper on. Well, I'm going to move to the legislation because that member is not worth it. But I do apologise to those watching, because that member tonight has brought this chamber into disrepute, lowered the tone and wallowed in the political sewer where he treads very, very often. Very, very often. And they may not, so I'm accused of that. No, I'm accused of standing up and defending a colleague from a vicious and scurrilous attack by that piece of work over there. Well, there you go. There's a second one. There's a second one. I could forgive that member because she hasn't been around here that long and she's not that experienced, and these things happen. But I know, not that one over there, the member for West Coast. He knew exactly what he was doing, exactly what he was saying. It was calculated, and it is seen for what it is. Now, we move to the legislation. I say this, that we will, as Damien O'Connor said, support this piece of legislation, but with some gross reservations. Because, of course, this legislation, been round for a while, dressed up, brought into the chamber, trumpeted in a lofty way that the National Party does. But then we look at the history and the facts. We know that Dr. Nick Smith is great at getting up and lecturing us on history and lecturing us on what other governments have done. But you see, on entry into this place in government, what Nick Smith's government did was cut immediately in its first budget $2.8 million out of the biosecurity budget. That was such their commitment to biosecurity. And we know on all sides of this House, because we support our primary industries, that an incursion of any kind, whether it be a minor incursion or, God forbid, whether it be foot and mouth or whatever, would be terminal for our primary industries in New Zealand. Then it followed, of course, that in 2009, Dr. Smith's government slashed 54 frontline biosecurity officers. More redundancies have followed, and the latest figures show there are 91 fewer staff on our borders now than in 2008. So such is their commitment to biosecurity, sir. Such is their... and then we talk about drug dogs. And Wellington Airport, I don't believe... Sorry, not drug dogs, the biosecurity dogs. Sniffer dogs have not had a sniffer dog, I think, since what, October? October over a year ago. So such is their commitment to biosecurity. So yes, we'll support the bill, but we know, of course, that if we had an outbreak of foot and mouth, it would cost us billions and billions of dollars. It would destroy our primary industries and destroy our economic base. So I say to Dr. Smith and others as they stand here and lecture us on history, that they should look at their own recent history in respect of their last few years in office and their commitment to biosecurity. There are many farmers on that side. There are many farmers who are in the industry, doing the business, who know far more about this sort of thing than many of us who are townies in this place. But there is a commitment that's needed, a real one, not a piece of legislation that's dressed up, but some dollars, some cents, some staff to protect our border. This is what this is about. And this is about New Zealand Inc. This is not about politics. This is about a bipartisan approach, as we have generally had to primary industries in this country. So I say, sir, we should get a bit real about this. We should make a serious attempt to get to grips with this and protect our border. And we shouldn't engage, sir, in scurrilous and underhanded political sewer tactics that we saw tonight from that member, Nick Smith.
Scott Simpson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the biosecurity